The miracle stories are frequently interwoven with teachings, and the miracles themselves often carry a didactic dimension. 221. 222. Many emphasize the importance of faith. In the cleansing of 10 lepers and the raising of Jairus' daughter, for instance, the beneficiaries are told that their healing is due to their faith. 223. 224. In A Marginal Jew, scholar John P. Meyer argues that the miracle traditions about Jesus' public ministry are already so widely attested in various sources that any total fabrication by the early church is, practically speaking, impossible. He bases this claim on literary sources such as the Gospels of Matthew, Luke, and John, as well as on the writings of the historian Josephus. Meyer contends that the criterion of multiple attestation of sources and forms supports the conclusion that Jesus performed extraordinary deeds, which his contemporaries regarded as miracles. 225. Scholar Paul J. Achtemeier argues that such miracles were not unique to Jesus in the ancient world, and were perceived as ambiguous even by eyewitnesses. He notes that Jesus likely performed acts understood as exorcisms, which were accepted as reality by his contemporaries, but that these should not be seen as having probative value with respect to Jesus, since witnesses could claim that he was working with either Satan or God. 226 scholar Gregory Sterling observes that, in the case of Jesus' alleged exorcisms, for first-century Galileans who believed in the personal presence of evil in the form of demons, Jesus' act was a validation of his ministry. 227. Proclamation, Transfiguration, and Passion Week. Main articles: Confession of Peter and Transfiguration of Jesus. The Transfiguration of Jesus, depicted by Karl Bloch, 19th century. At approximately the midpoint of each of the three synoptic Gospels, two significant events are narrated: the confession of Peter and the transfiguration of Jesus, not mentioned in the Gospel of John. 179, 228, 156, 157, 229. In the confession of Peter, Peter declares to Jesus, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." 230, 231, 232. Jesus affirms that this is a divinely revealed truth. 233, 234. Following this confession, Jesus begins to tell his disciples about his forthcoming suffering, death, and resurrection. 235. In the Transfiguration, 236, 156, 157, 179. Jesus takes Peter and two other apostles up an unnamed mountain, where he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became dazzling white. 237. A bright cloud envelops them, and a voice from the cloud proclaims, "This is my Son, the Beloved. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." 238. 156. The description of the final week of Jesus' life, often referred to as Passion Week, occupies roughly 1/3 of the narrative in the canonical Gospels. 105. This section begins with Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem and concludes with his crucifixion. 149, 183. Activities in Jerusalem. Main articles: Triumphal entry into Jerusalem, cleansing of the temple, and bargain of Judas. A painting of Jesus' final entry into Jerusalem by Jean-Léon Gérôme, 1897. In the Synoptic Gospels, the final week in Jerusalem concludes the journey through Perea and Judea that Jesus began in Galilee. Jesus enters Jerusalem riding a young donkey, evoking the motif of the Messiah's donkey from the book of Zechariah. In the humble king of the Jews comes to the city in this manner. 239. 70. As he proceeds, people spread cloaks and small branches of trees, palm fronds, on the road before him and chant lines from Psalm 118:25 to 26. 240. 241. 242. 243. Jesus next expels the money changers from the temple, accusing them of turning it into a den of thieves through their commercial activities. Most scholars agree that it is overwhelmingly likely that Jesus did something in the temple and mentioned its destruction. 244. 174. In John, the cleansing of the temple occurs at the beginning of Jesus' ministry instead of at the end. 245. 101. Ancient compositional practices involved such chronological displacement and compression, with even reliable biographers like Plutarch displaying them. 246. Jesus comes into conflict with the Jewish elders, such as when they question his authority and when he criticizes them and calls them hypocrites. 241. 243. Judas Iscariot, one of the 12 apostles, secretly strikes a bargain with the Jewish elders, agreeing to betray Jesus to them for 30 silver coins. 247. 248. The Gospel of John recounts two other feasts in which Jesus taught in Jerusalem before the Passion Week. 249. 136. In Bethany, a village near Jerusalem, Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. This potent sign, 101, increases the tension with authorities. 183, who conspire to kill him. 250. 136. Mary of Bethany anoints Jesus' feet, foreshadowing his entombment. 251. Jesus then makes his messianic entry into Jerusalem. 136. The cheering crowds greeting Jesus as he enters Jerusalem add to the animosity between him and the establishment. 183. In John, Jesus has already cleansed the Second Temple during an earlier Passover visit to Jerusalem. John next recounts Jesus' Last Supper with his disciples. 136. Last Supper. Main article, Last Supper. See also, Jesus predicts his betrayal, denial of Peter, and Last Supper in Christian art. The Last Supper, depicted by Juan de Juanes, circa 1562. The Last Supper is the final meal that Jesus shared with his 12 apostles in Jerusalem before his crucifixion. The Last Supper is mentioned in all 4 canonical Gospels. Paul's first epistle to the Corinthians. 252 also refers to it. 55, 56, 253. During the meal, Jesus predicts that one of his apostles will betray him. 254. Despite each apostle's assertion that he would not betray him, Jesus reiterates that the betrayer would be one of those present. Matthew 26, 23 to 25, and John 13, 26 to 27 identify Judas as the traitor. 55, 56, 254. In the Synoptics, Jesus takes bread, breaks it, and gives it to the disciples, saying, "This is my body, which is given for you." He then has them all drink from a cup, saying, "This cup that is poured out for you is the new covenant in my blood." 255, 55, 256. The Christian sacrament or ordinance of the Eucharist is based on these events. 257. Although the Gospel of John does not include a description of the bread and wine ritual during the Last Supper, most scholars agree that John 6:22 to 59, the Bread of Life discourse, has a Eucharistic character and resonates with the institution narratives in the Synoptic Gospels and in the Pauline writings on the Last Supper. 258. In all four Gospels, Jesus predicts that Peter will deny knowledge of him 3 times before the cock crows the next morning. 259. 260. In Luke and John, the prediction is made during the supper. 261. In Matthew and Mark, the prediction is made after the supper. Jesus also predicts that all his disciples will desert him. 262. 263. The Gospel of John provides the only account of Jesus washing his disciples' feet after the meal. 123. John also includes a long sermon by Jesus, preparing his disciples, now without Judas, for his departure. Chapters 14 to 17 of the Gospel of John are known as the Farewell Discourse and are a significant source of Christological content. 264. 265. Agony in the Garden, Betrayal and Arrest. Main articles: Agony in the Garden, Kiss of Judas, and Arrest of Jesus. A depiction of the kiss of Judas and arrest of Jesus, by Caravaggio, circa 1602. In the Synoptics, Jesus and his disciples go to the Garden Gethsemane, where Jesus prays to be spared his coming ordeal. Then Judas comes with an armed mob, sent by the chief priests, scribes, and elders. He kisses Jesus to identify him to the crowd, which then arrests Jesus. In an attempt to stop them, an unnamed disciple of Jesus uses a sword to cut off the ear of a man in the crowd. After Jesus' arrest, his disciples go into hiding, and Peter, when questioned, thrice denies knowing Jesus. After the third denial, Peter hears the cock crow and recalls Jesus' prediction about his denial. Peter then weeps bitterly. 263, 174, 259. In John 18:1-11, Jesus does not pray to be spared his crucifixion, as the gospel portrays him as scarcely touched by such human weakness. 266. The people who arrest him are Roman soldiers and temple guards. 267. Instead of being betrayed by a kiss, Jesus proclaims his identity, and when he does, the soldiers and officers fall to the ground. The gospel identifies Peter as the disciple who used the sword, and Jesus rebukes him for it. Trials by the Sanhedrin, Herod and Pilate. Main articles: Sanhedrin trial of Jesus, Pilate's court, and Jesus at Herod's court. See also Jesus, King of the Jews, John 18:38, and Ecce Homo. After his arrest, Jesus is taken late at night to the private residence of the high priest, Caiaphas, who had been installed by Pilate's predecessor, the Roman procurator Valerius Gratus. 268. The Sanhedrin was a Jewish judicial body. 269.